Breaking tonight, the vote just in. Are we headed to the first government shutdown in years? The bitter battle with Congress deadlocked ahead of the midnight deadline. 750,000 workers set to be furloughed or lose their jobs entirely. What it means for Social Security, student loans, national parks, and air travel. Also tonight, the major changes to the U.S. military, the unprecedented move from the defense secretary and commander-in-chief, the new fitness standards, grooming rules, and drill instructors allowed to put their hands on recruits, why the president says the military should train in U.S. cities. Shocking video, a deputy suspended after kicking and threatening a group of teens while he was off duty but partially in uniform, even pulling his guns as they cried out for help. Prosecutors pushing for Diddy to spend 11 years behind bars with sentencing just days away. The new details about if the music mogul plans to speak in court. House after house collapsing in North Carolina's Outer Banks as two hurricanes lash at the coastline. Plus, with the MLB wildcard series in full swing, not all fans will be allowed in the stands. We'll explain the major curveball restricting ticket sales. Top story starts right now. Good evening. Tonight, America is on the precipice. A government shutdown now just hours away, with both parties trading insults and shifting blame as the funding runs out. You are looking live right now at the Senate floor as the chamber votes right now on a last-ditch effort to avert a shutdown. On one side, the Republicans, led by President Trump, they have a complete trifecta, the White House, the Senate, and the House, and they're asking for what they call a clean CR, or continuing resolution, which would fund the government for 7 weeks and allow more time to negotiate those larger spending bills. On the other side, though, the Democrats, led by Senator Chuck Schumer of New York and Hakeem Jeffries, also of New York, locked out of power but with just enough votes to kill the CR in the Senate. They're demanding rollbacks to some Medicaid cuts in Trump's so-called Big Beautiful Bill and an extension of Obamacare subsidies that expire at year's end. Trump praising the stakes of a possible shutdown even further, threatening to carry out mass firings of government workers if Democrats don't cave. Trump also inflaming tensions with a vulgar, misleading AI-generated video. You see it right here, accusing Democrats of demanding health care for undocumented immigrants. Democrats say that's a lie. The big question tonight, will anyone budge before the lights go out? Ryan Nobles, you know he's live for us tonight on Capitol Hill once again. Ryan, this vote is one of the last off-ramps before a shutdown, right? Get our viewers up to speed.
Well, Tom, right now the Senate is voting on a series of bills that are really the last effort to try and avoid a government shutdown. We are in the second of those two bills. The first failed to reach the 60-vote threshold. And while this vote is not complete yet, there are more votes that have been in the no column that would prevent this from passing than there are available votes to get it over the finish line. So that means, as we've been predicting for some time, that a federal government shutdown is going to happen. Tonight, just hours from a partial federal government shutdown, Senate Republicans making a last-ditch effort to get enough Democratic votes to keep the government open. But coming up short. Republicans need 60 votes to pass a spending bill to avoid a shutdown, meaning they need at least 7 Democrats to support it.
It's up to Senate Democrats. If they decide to vote it down tonight, they're going to be the ones that have to explain at midnight tonight why the government is shut down.
Democrats say they want to reverse GOP changes to Medicaid. What's the plan to get out of it?
The American people are learning how bad this health care crisis is, and they will put tremendous heat on Republicans to solve it.
But Republicans say Democrats should not shut down the government while both sides negotiate. Is there any way out?
I don't know. That's what worries me. I don't know why. I just say to my Democrat colleagues, there is no reason for a shutdown.
The last thing we want to do is shut it down, but a lot of good can come down from shutdowns. We can get rid of a lot of things that we didn't want, and they'd be Democrat things.
President Trump tonight warning of mass firings.
The Democrats want to shut it down, so when you shut it down, you have to do layoffs.
You can't fire massive firings in the federal government without hurting the quality of services for the American people.
In a shutdown, Social Security, Medicare, and VA benefits would continue, as would student loans. But national parks could close, and 750,000 federal workers could be furloughed. Others, like TSA officers, would work without pay.
We're looking for bombs, weapons, stuff like that, and you can't miss, right? So you don't want officers with added stress of how am I going to pay my bills.
All right, Ryan Nobles is back with us from Capitol Hill. So, Ryan, you mentioned all those federal workers who could lose out on paychecks. If the shutdown happens, what about members of Congress?
Yeah, members of Congress are exempt from that, Tom, even though there have been pushes over the years around shutdowns to deny members of Congress pay. That never actually has happened. So members of Congress will continue to get their paychecks regardless of how long the shutdown plays out. Now, there are some members of Congress that have asked the Treasury not to issue them paychecks, others that have said that they will donate it to charity. It's also important to keep in mind, while those members of Congress will still get paid, their hardworking staffs, many of whom will still continue to come to work, they also will not get their paychecks during this period of time. Tom.
Okay, Ryan Nobles there explaining it all for us. Ryan, we thank you. I want to bring in our panel to discuss this tonight. Former Republican Congressman Carlos Curbelo and Arshi Siddiqui, former Senate aide, senior aide, I should say, to Speaker Nancy Pelosi. I thank you both for being here. Carlos, I want to put up this new New York Times Siena College poll for our viewers here. When asked who is to blame for a shutdown, both sides sort of get the blame, with Republicans getting slightly more blame compared to Democrats. You see that there. What do you make of these numbers, and do either side really have anything to gain from a shutdown?
Look, Tom, I think the Democratic Party is in a very difficult position right now. On the one hand, they have their base that is demanding a fight with Donald Trump. They want Democrats to shut down the government. But on the other hand, centrist voters, swing voters, the type that typically decide who controls Congress, and that's coming up next year, they don't really like these government shutdowns, and they tend to punish or reject the party that shuts down the government. I can tell you, having been a part of Congresses where Republicans shut down the government, we always lost the fight in the court of public opinion. And I think Democrats are going to have a lot of trouble justifying this government shutdown, particularly if it goes on for a long time.
You know, Archie, back in March, you'll remember Senator Schumer got backlash for actually voting in favor of the Republican spending bill to keep the government open. Is this latest move all to show the base that Democrats can take a hard line against Republicans, or is this truly about insurance subsidies and other cuts in the bill?
No, this is very much about the Affordable Care Act and making sure that American families can at least count on the fact that these premiums will stay in the realm of the possible. So we're looking at right now, these plans are being negotiated. Notices are going to go out for health care for next year. The increases are about up to 75% increase in premiums. This is millions of Americans who are already struggling. So the reason that's driving this whole conversation is really that there's a timely issue that needs to be addressed now. Otherwise, the open enrollment will start and folks will fall off the rolls on the Affordable Care Act.
You know, Carlos, President Trump has said, and we heard this in the piece there will be layoffs of federal workers instead of furloughs. Do you actually think that's going to happen, and what kind of backlash would the administration get from that?
It may happen, Tom. I think you have to take President Trump's threat seriously. He has proven that he's willing to act in a very bold way and an aggressive way to reshape the government. I will tell you this. If the administration goes too far in laying off workers, if government functions, important services are disrupted, then I think under that type of circumstance, Democrats could actually get bailed out here by Republicans. If the public thinks that the president is going too far and doing things that really he's not required to do under the law, he may argue that he can do them, but there's no need to lay off workers, right? We've had many government shutdowns and we've never really had layoffs. So this is somewhere where the president could overreach. He's making the threat. I would certainly take it seriously, but I do think it could backfire.
You know, Archie, if there are layoffs as a result of the shutdown and other federal programs are eliminated, could this risk hurt Democrats?
Listen, I think this is going to be an open question and an ongoing debate in terms of we've already seen the blame game begin. But when it comes to the Democratic position, there has been a concerted effort to meet and negotiate and kind of have a give and take on these cost of living issues. But unfortunately, the first meeting was yesterday. It was not a negotiation. And there is a tried and true formula on these government shutdown / government funding discussions, and a successful one. But unfortunately, it was a one-sided take it or leave it deal, and Democrats had to take a stand, particularly given this deadline on the Affordable Care Act premiums.
Archie and Carlos, we thank you both for being part of our panel tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, now to a gathering unprecedented in modern times. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth summoning hundreds of U.S. generals and admirals from around the world for a speech at Quantico's Marine Corps base, where he told them to get on board with a series of controversial changes or resign. Here's Courtney Cuby with the details.
The topic was shrouded in secrecy beforehand and security was tight. Some of the nation's most senior military leaders ordered to board buses at 3:30 a.m. and then wait hours for the event to begin, according to defense officials.
This speech today is about people, and it's about culture.
Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth telling generals and admirals who'd flown in from all over the world to get on board with a series of changes.
But if the words I'm speaking today are making your heart sink, then you should do the honorable thing and resign.
The new standards include new grooming rules that prohibit beards and a requirement that everyone in combat roles must meet the highest male standard for physical fitness, a change that could impact women in uniform.
If that means no women qualify for some combat jobs, so be it.
He also plans to overhaul equal opportunity programs and the role of the Inspector General at a time when the Secretary himself awaits the release of an IG review on whether he shared sensitive information on Signal, an unclassified server, an accusation Hegseth denies. New recruits could also see changes, lifting restrictions on how far drill instructors can go.
They can swear, and yes, they can put their hands on recruits. This does not mean they can be reckless or violate the law, but they can use tried and true methods to motivate new recruits.
Retired Lieutenant General Mark Hertling is concerned about the impact all of it may have on troops.
To hear the kinds of things that came out of the Secretary's mouth shows that he doesn't really respect them as contributors to the combat arms or fighting our nation's wars.
President Trump today endorsing Hegseth's speech and repeating his ultimatum.
If you don't like what I'm saying, you can leave the room. Of course, there goes your rank, there goes your future.
In the president's remarks, which were highly political, he also defended the use of troops in American cities.
And I told Pete we should use some of these dangerous cities as training grounds for our military.
All right, with that, Courtney Cuby joins us from the Pentagon. So, Courtney, tell us more about how the generals reacted to the president and the secretary's speeches.
Tom, that was one of the big questions going into the event today, is exactly how these assembled hundreds of admirals and generals would react, not only to Secretary Hegseth, but to President Trump, whose speech, as we said, was highly political. There was silence. There was very little reaction from the assembled generals and admirals, with the exception of the fact there was polite clapping at the end of each of the speeches. But that was a real departure from what President Trump is used to. Tom, at the beginning of his speech, he even mentioned it, that it was so uncommon for him to come out to such a quiet audience, but he said he had been warned about it. Tom?
All right, Courtney Cuby first. Courtney, we thank you. We're also following some more breaking news tonight. A dramatic scene unfolding along the North Carolina coast. Look at this. At least 5 homes in Cape Hatteras collapsing into the rough surf, all within just 45 minutes of each other. It comes as 2 hurricanes, Umberto and Imelda, swirl in the Atlantic. I want to get right to NBC News meteorologist Bill Cairns. Bill, those are striking photos here. And it's incredible, right? Because when we look at your radar, these storms are massive, but these weren't direct impacts.
No, but the huge waves and swells have arrived. They did it during the high tide today. That's when we lost those 5 houses on the Outer Banks. These are condemned houses. No one lives there. Everything's been emptied out of them. It was known, months and even years ago in some cases that the ocean was going to win this battle with erosion through the years. Part of it, climate change, the rising seas, larger storms, more erosion events. But this is also a natural process. 26 years ago, the Cape Hatteras Lighthouse was moved from the shore inland because of erosions. This is nothing new, but this is a problem that's going to be with us and getting worse. And anytime we get big, huge storms like this, we're going to have issues. Highway 12 is going to get flooded. There's going to be more communities in the decades ahead that are going to have to will get cut off or maybe have to be condemned also. So as far as our 2 storms go, we still have 2 hurricanes out there. It's pretty amazing in our record of satellite keeping. We've never had 2 hurricanes this close to each other. Umberto is exiting, and Imelda is going to follow it. I mean, we had those problems. You saw those results, but we didn't get any direct landfalls. We're very fortunate. Again, at one point, these were less than 500 miles apart. So where do they go from here? But we're still going to deal with the huge waves, the rip current threat as we go throughout the end of this week. That's going to stay with us. Waves crashing at the beaches, a lot of erosion, especially at high tide. Umberto's going to go well north of Bermuda, not a problem. But this time tomorrow, we expect Imelda to make a direct hit right on top of Bermuda as a Category 2 hurricane. That's going to mean power outages, large, huge waves causing issues, and with the rainfall also. And Tom, I know you like this map. All of our computer models are going to show up here from the different countries. Most of them go north of Bermuda. We're hoping that that's a good change and that forecast can improve. But we'll find out tomorrow night, right about this time.
Before you go, we only got about 30 seconds here. The Fujiwara effect, did that happen or not really?
It didn't really happen a lot. That's typically when we get two storms, two areas of low pressure that kind of will rotate around each other. That didn't necessarily happen in this case. One kind of weakened the steering and the other one followed it. So not a textbook case where we could say the Fujiwara effect happened.
All right, Bill Cairns, thanks so much for the last week of coverage. We appreciate that. Now to South Carolina, where an incident with a deputy was caught on camera. The video shows the officer drawing and pointing a gun at young kids in the neighborhood, appearing to say, "I will shoot you." NBC's Priscilla Thompson has more.
Bro, get on the ground! Come here!
Growing outrage in South Carolina over this video.
Sir, can you call the cops, please? Hey, call the police. I am the police. What are you doing? Get the f*** on the ground. Yo, hey.
An off-duty Beaufort County Sheriff's deputy seen pulling and kicking and pointing his gun at a group of teens who were in his Hilton Head neighborhood Sunday night, the Sheriff's Department says. NBC News does not know what happened before the recording.
I will shoot you.
The officer heard saying, "I will shoot you," as one of the boys begs him to stop.
Hey, no, 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 stop, stop. Do not shoot. Why are you pointing? I don't know. Why are you doing what?
Then screams for help and mom.
Hey, help! 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 Mom! Mom!
That officer, who officials have not publicly identified, is now suspended without pay, the Sheriff's Department says, pending an internal affairs and possible state criminal investigation. The department saying in a statement, deputies are held to a higher standard as they must abide by all policies and procedures, both on and off duty.
Bro, what are you doing?
As tonight, many in the idyllic beachside community demanding answers. And as for what the families of those teens are saying, we are in touch with several of them. They are not speaking out publicly right now. And as for that officer, we know that his credentials, his badge, and also his service weapon have now been removed pending that investigation. Tom?
Okay, Priscilla, we thank you for that crazy video. Overseas now to the conflict in the Middle East, President Trump's Gaza peace plan picking up momentum tonight with more Arab states announcing their support. This as the president puts new pressure on Hamas to respond. Here's Richard Engel with the latest from the region.
President Trump said today that time is running out for Hamas to accept his proposal to end the war in Gaza.
Well, we're going to do about 3 or 4 days.
And if Hamas says no, Israel has the green light from the U.S. to keep the war going.
We have one signature that we need, and that signature will pay in hell if they don't sign. I hope they sign.
Israel has already approved Trump's plan, which demands Hamas release all of its hostages in 72 hours and disarm, in return for Israel withdrawing from much of Gaza. And the Trump proposal has momentum, now backed by nearly a dozen Arab and Muslim-majority countries, including Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and Jordan. And that is lifting the spirits of Eli David. His brother Eviatar is one of the remaining living hostages, last seen skin and bones in a Hamas video.
I don't know if we'll see a lot of hostages coming back in 3 days. It sounds like a dream to me.
Does it feel any different this time than previous attempts that have obviously been unsuccessful for your brother?
Yes, it does. It does. It does. To see the support worldwide from side to side, in Israel and abroad, maybe it is different.
Tonight, Hamas says it is still studying the terms of Trump's peace plan. Tom?
All right, Richard Engel first. Richard, we thank you. Now to the Philippines, where the death toll is rising after a powerful earthquake rocked the center of the country. The 6.9 magnitude quake sending people scrambling into the streets and destroying buildings. The top of a stone church crashing to the ground. You see it right there was a cross. And look at this bridge. Drivers falling off their motorbikes as the road started to sway. Officials there say at least 20 people are dead and many more are injured. Okay, we're going to turn now to that breaking news. We do have an update. We want to return to Capitol Hill. That final scheduled vote on a spending bill to avert a government shutdown has just failed in the Senate. You are looking live at the Senate floor here moments after that spending measure missed the 60-vote threshold, barring any other currently unscheduled votes. The federal government will now shut down at midnight. 750,000 workers, at least probably more than that, expected to be impacted, including, again, that 750,000 that could possibly be furloughed. The president has already threatened that some could permanently lose their jobs. We're going to continue to follow this breaking story throughout the broadcast. But again, that vote has failed. We are back in a moment with music mogul Sean Diddy Combs just days away from sentencing for his conviction on prostitution charges. Will he speak in his own defense? What we're learning from Chloe Malas. We are back tonight with just days away from when Sean Diddy Combs is set to be sentenced. Federal prosecutors seeking more than 11 years in prison, while the music mogul's team wants 14 months. Combs was found guilty back in July on 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. NBC's Chloe Malas has the story.
Tonight, prosecutors asking a judge to sentence Sean Diddy Combs to more than 11 years in federal prison, arguing he engaged in violence and put others in fear. A stark contrast to Combs' legal team, who are seeking 14 months, which would see him walk free in a matter of weeks, as he's already served 13 months in prison.
Look for the judge to land somewhere in the middle, split the difference, a sentence of maybe 4 to 6 years.
Combs was convicted on prostitution charges over the summer, but acquitted of sex trafficking and racketeering, which carried up to a life sentence in prison. A source familiar with Combs' strategy telling NBC News that the mogul plans to address the court himself during his sentencing hearing. Both sides have submitted letters to the judge, one written by Cassie Ventura, Combs' former girlfriend, who was a key prosecution witness, writing in part, "I am so scared that if he walks free, his first actions will be swift retribution towards me and others who spoke up." Combs' 85-year-old mother writing that her son has made some terrible mistakes in his life, which I know he recognizes.
All right, with that, Chloe Malas joins us now and said, along with NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalos, who we just heard from in the piece there. Chloe, I'm going to start with you. Walk our viewers through what we can expect, what we think is going to happen with Diddy in court on Friday.
So the hearing starts around 9:30 a.m. on Friday, Tom, and it's expected to last for several hours. You could potentially see some victim impact statements being read. Maybe Cassie Ventura would show up to court, or perhaps some of the other witnesses that testified. Sean Combs is expected to address the judge in his own words, and this would be a very impactful moment because he has not had a chance to say anything because he did not testify in his own defense during that several-week trial. And then his whole family is expected to be there, and his mother, who wrote one of the letters saying, "Look, I'm getting older, I'm 85 years old, I really want to spend my time with my son." We could potentially hear from her, and then we'll obviously hear from the judge.
And then, Danny, we heard from you there in Chloe's piece. Explain more your theory on where you think this is going to land on the sentencing. You believe that when this is all said and done, Sean Diddy Combs is going to be in prison for a while.
For a while, but by a while, I mean maybe a couple years at most. He's already got time served that he's going to get credit for. So any sentence of 2 years or less is pretty much a time-served sentence. On the other hand, I think the government is being a little ambitious with their sentencing calculations. I think 11 years is very high, but I do think the judge is going to give him some time.
Is that the play, though? Do they go higher to hope to get somewhere past the couple years, 2-3 years? Because wouldn't it be embarrassing if they ask for 11 years and they get 14 months or whatever his team wants?
Right. Well, the government showed through their calculations of the sentencing guidelines, and what this case illustrates perfectly is that these guidelines that are supposed to be objective are actually really subjective. And when you're the defense, no surprise, you calculate them as low as you can. And when you're the government, you calculate them very high with that theory. You ask high, you get somewhere in the middle. For the defense, it's actually a bigger challenge. Do you either be reasonable and make a low request for sentencing, or do you ask for what the client always wants, which is always zero? They always want zero. So you have a difficult choice to make. Do I appear reasonable, or do I give the client the request that he wants?
Danny and Chloe, I'm sure we're going to hear a lot from you guys on Friday. Thanks for being here. Okay, still ahead on Top Story, the president unveiling TrumpRx and a new deal with Pfizer, who qualifies for cheaper drugs, and the other companies that could be next. We'll explain. We are back now with more news from the Trump administration. The president announcing today an agreement with pharmaceutical company Pfizer to voluntarily sell some of its drugs for less. Gabe Gutierrez has been following it all from the White House. Gabe, good to see you tonight. So these lower prices, explain to our viewers, will be available on a soon-to-be-launched website?
Yeah, that's right, Tom. Senior administration officials say that new website, TrumpRx, will have links for Americans to buy drugs directly from manufacturers by early next year. Now, Pfizer has agreed to sell drugs to Medicaid patients at the lowest prices offered in other developed countries. The president says that means a price drop of 85% for a post-menopause drug, for example, and a 50% drop for a migraine medicine. Now, Pfizer also agreed to invest in U.S. manufacturing in exchange for not facing tariffs for 3 years. Critics, though, question how much of an impact this will have, since most Americans pay for their drugs through insurance, not out of pocket. The administration, though, believes other drug makers will follow, but that's not certain yet, Tom.
All right, Gabe Gutierrez. Gabe, we thank you. Now to a lawsuit against pharmaceutical giant Pfizer over a popular birth control drug. More than 1,000 women suing the drug company, saying it failed to warn doctors and patients about the risk of tumors. NBC's Clay Esamoah has this report.
Robin Phillip has been through 2 surgeries and months of radiation, all due to a tumor she now believes was caused by her birth control injections.
If I would have knew from the get-go, I would have never took that shot.
In 2018, doctors discovered a tumor called a meningioma pressing on Phillip's brain.
This right here.
Emergency surgery left her without vision in her left eye. She even had to relearn how to walk.
It was a whole reframing of life. I lost my apartment. I had to move in with my mama.
Depo-Provera is a progestin shot injected every 3 months. 1 in 4 women in the United States use it, with black women taking the shot at nearly double the national rate. Phillip took it for nearly 30 years.
The only time you stopped was when you had your 2 children.
Yes.
Multiple studies have found a potential link between depo and meningioma, including one that found women who took the drug for more than a year had 5 times the risk of developing the tumor.
So overall, meningioma is not common. The likelihood of having a meningioma as a depo user is incredibly low. It's just that it's incredibly low for people who don't use depo.
Phillip is now one of more than 1,000 women suing Pfizer, the maker of Depo-Provera, alleging the company chose to ignore relevant safety concerns and deliberately not study the long-term safety of depo.
These women all have meningiomas, many have surgery, some have radiation, and they've all had their lives greatly impacted.
The European Union added a warning label for meningioma to the drug in 2024. Canada has listed it as an adverse reaction since 2006. No such warning exists in the United States. In a motion seeking dismissal of the case, Pfizer says it became aware of the risks of meningiomas in 2023 and made an application to the FDA to change the drug's warning label. The company says the FDA rejected their effort to warn patients. The FDA declined our request for comment, but in a letter to Pfizer included in the motion, it wrote the findings of the available observational studies alone do not support the addition of a warning. Pfizer saying to NBC News it stands behind the safety and efficacy of Depo-Provera.
There was enough information decades ago for them to have done the proper studies and paid more attention and warned.
Even after Robin Phillip's 2018 surgery, she kept taking Depo. Her tumor grew back.
If you had known about this link, this risk earlier, would you have stopped?
Yes. Yes. Cold turkey. I would have stopped.
And just yesterday, oral arguments for this case took place. Pfizer filed a motion to dismiss, and the case remains in the hands of a Florida judge. Now, if you are taking Depo-Provera, doctors say there is no need to panic. The risk of developing a meningioma tumor is still incredibly low. But if you are experiencing any symptoms, you should talk to your doctor about any potential risks. Now, as for Robin Phillip, earlier this month, she had her first brain scan since stopping the drug. And there is good news. Phillip's radiologist tells her the tumor is shrinking. Tom?
Clay Esamoah for us in. Clay, we thank you for that. Then at Top Stories news feed, and right now the U.S. is beginning to deport dozens of Iranians after a rare deal with Tehran. Iran says 120 of its nationals will return after reportedly entering the U.S. from Mexico illegally. More Iranian nationals are expected to be deported in the coming weeks. The move is part of President Trump's immigration crackdown. And DoorDash rolling out its autonomous delivery robots in Phoenix. Take a look. This is Dot, a red delivery bot. The company says can travel up to 20 miles an hour and navigate roads, sidewalks, and bike paths. Critics voicing concerns that it could replace human workers. The company says it plans to expand to other cities as soon as possible. All right. Scientists announcing a major fertility breakthrough after successfully creating an embryo from human skin cells. Researchers at Oregon Health and Science University inserted DNA from skin cells into donor eggs, then fertilized them to make early-stage human embryos. The technique could eventually allow same-sex couples to have a genetically related child and could offer those struggling with infertility a new option. It could take a decade, though, before this method is used. And today is your last chance to check out If You've Got Mail on AOL's dial-up internet service, the company pulling the plug on the service 3 decades after it became one of the first mainstream gateways to the internet. And its peak, AOL had more than 20 million users, according to recent census data. More than 100,000 people still relied on dial-up in many rural and remote areas. But there is new life for a different legacy program, Reading Rainbow, back after 20 years. And its long-running host signed off. You remember that. New episodes of the beloved children's program will drop on YouTube and the Reading Rainbow website every Saturday morning in October. And there's a new host. His name is Michael Threets. That's him right there. He's a former librarian with a massive online following. Good luck to them and to the show and to everything else. Major League Baseball playoffs are in full swing right now with all 4 wildcard series kicking off tonight. Here's a look at the full postseason bracket. The Milwaukee Brewers finishing the regular season with the best record in all of baseball, looking like the strong favorite in the National League, maybe. But to make it to the World Series, they likely have to make it through either the LA Dodgers or the Phillies, 2 perennial powerhouses who both have great teams. And the Toronto Blue Jays getting that #1 seed in the American League. The Seattle Mariners at #2 also looking strong. But the Yankees, who won 9 out of their last 10 games, are coming into the postseason hot and could be the team to beat. We hope so. First, they'll have to get through the rival Boston Red Sox. The first to win 2 games in the Bronx will move on. But guess who won't be there to watch? A lot of Red Sox fans. This is the Ticketmaster message that popped up for fans trying to buy tickets from Massachusetts. Quote, sales to this event will be restricted to residents of New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut, and Pennsylvania, huh? We should know we reached out to Ticketmaster and the Yankees, and both declined to comment. Baker Machado, host of Front Office Sports and a good friend of Top Story, joins us tonight, a man who knows baseball. Baker, I want to get your take on that headline. The Yankees are saying they've done something like this before. It's getting a lot of headlines tonight. Sounds sort of strange.
It's very strange, Tom, and you're right. The Yankees have said they've done this since 2018, but I think we're only really realizing it now because it's the wild card postseason. And I actually looked into the Ticketmaster games of the other wild card games happening today, and this was nowhere in Los Angeles. This was not in Cleveland. This was not in Chicago today. None of these other teams are doing the same thing. Now, the Yankees are saying they're doing this to keep it local, to make sure fans of those states that you just mentioned are able to go to the games, and also to cut down on the amount of ticket scalpers out there. But I should note the Boston Red Sox did release a statement to the NBC affiliate in Boston today, and they said they have no plans to do this, and they have never done this. The Yankees, by the way, are still planning to do this against the Blue Jays if they beat the Red Sox. So this is not just a Red Sox thing. It sounds like the Yankees are planning to do this for a little while.
If you're a baseball fan, you're taking this week off because there's so many games playing during the day. We can't talk about the games at night because they're happening, right? We don't want to spoil anyone's fun. But we do want to talk about what we know so far. Detroit Tigers pulling off a win against the Cleveland Guardians, right? How did they look?
I mean, Detroit looked incredible in this game. And by the way, Cleveland almost came back and won this in the bottom of the 9th. They had a runner on third with nobody out and couldn't get a run in to save to win the game. So, yeah, Detroit had one of the best performances.
And a lot of people thought Detroit was a team to beat.
Especially given the fact that Detroit had one of the biggest collapses in baseball history, had a 15-game lead over Cleveland in the month of June and just barely got into the postseason. A lot of people thought Cleveland, which they still could be, one of the sleeper teams going into all of this. And then the Cubs and the Padres. That is a very evenly matched
for the Padres,
as well. Both of those teams basically really even matched. A lot of people expect that game to go the full 3 games in that series.
Yeah, how do the Padres look? And I know they lost today.
ball. The Padres, if they can get to the 6th inning, are 62-5 this season after the 6th inning with how good their bullpen is. But that didn't matter today because the Cubs offense woke up today.
Jumping ahead, I don't want to jinx the Yankees, so we're not going to talk about the Yankees. Dodgers, Reds.
Yes.
Okay, I actually saw them play in L.A. I saw the Dodgers killed them. Philadelphia's going to be tough.
Yep.
Is L.A. still the team to beat or not really?
Look, the betting favorite right now, I've looked at all the sports books, actually, weirdly, is the Phillies and the Mariners. Right now are the two best odds to win it. But I should say the Dodgers are looking to be the first team since your Yankees in 2008 to win back-to-back World Series championships. Right. And by the way, this is the exact same Dodgers team, plus a couple other good guys that won this entire thing
They're
last
like a
year.
super team.
Yes, they basically are. They have the best starting pitching out there. And if it does go to a Game 3 this week, Shohei Ohtani will be pitching in that game. Ohtani likely the front runner for the National League MVP winner. He would be back-to-back in that if he does it.
They're telling me to wrap. I want to keep going. Does Cal Raleigh have it to carry the Mariners?
But I will leave you with this nugget in the sense of who's going to win. Yeah. The last 5 World Series winners, their teams had the top 4 home runs hit in the league.
Oh, great stat.
The top teams this year in home runs, the Yankees and the Dodgers.
Yeah, all right, good stat. Baker Machado, always great to have you. We thank you.
Tom.
We are back now with the urgent search for survivors after a deadly school collapse in Indonesia. Authorities racing to find dozens still buried under the rubble, even pumping oxygen into the wreckage to keep people alive. NBC's Raf Sanchez reports.
Tonight, in the ruins of this collapsed high school, a desperate race against time to save dozens of teenage students trapped in the debris. Officials say 38 people are missing, some calling out to search teams from below the rubble. 3 people already confirmed killed, and growing dread that the toll will rise. One moment of hope, this child rescued and rushed to an ambulance. But the search for others is painfully slow. This team is pumping oxygen into the wreckage, trying to keep survivors alive long enough for rescuers to reach them. Authorities say a top floor under construction crumbled. Parents now in agony waiting to learn the fate of their children, hoping they're on a list of those found alive. This man's 13-year-old nephew, Rosi, is still trapped. He says, I don't know how he's doing, whether he can be saved, whether he's dead or alive. And Tom, this collapse happens the equivalent of Monday morning Eastern time, so those kids have been under the rubble now for about 36 hours. That is a very long time, but it is still well within what rescue professionals will tell you is the golden window, the 72 hours after a collapse, when it is still possible to get to people and get them out alive. And authorities in Indonesia say they will keep working for as long as it takes to get to those kids. Tom.
Raf Sanchez for us. Raf, our thanks to you. Okay, time now for Top Stories Global Watch. And people in Afghanistan are now facing a near total internet blackout. The Taliban hasn't commented or given any explanation, but it comes just weeks after the group cut off the internet to parts of the country, saying it wanted to crack down on immoral acts. It's the first time Afghanistan has experienced a shutdown like this since the Taliban seized power in 2021. The UN is calling on authorities to get all services back up and running. And a massive wildfire is ripping through one of Africa's largest national parks. Take a look at this video out of Namibia. You can see smoke billowing above the charred land. The wildfire has burned about a third of the park so far. That's nearly 2 million acres, an area larger than the size of the state of Delaware. The country is sending hundreds of soldiers to get to the flames under control. Authorities say the fire might have been caused by charcoal production on a nearby farm. And we thank you for watching Top Story tonight. I'm Tom Llamas in New York. Stay right there. More news on the way. We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.